That one-to-one first-party relationship with every single consumer that you have the opportunity to engage with is the new gold.
I think it's important to note here that there's no silver bullet or a single solution that addresses all of the changes in the digital landscape.
Probably the biggest bucket is let's just use some PII and deterministic data, first-party data to kind of bridge where we are today and kind of completely discredit third-party data in general, which works much better if you as a company have access to first-party data, but not all marketers will be in this situation. Then there's contextual data, which doesn't require individual identification, but is operating on the context of the page that you've landed on, which is a very old school way of targeting. It predates behavioral advertising and it's kind of coming back around into vogue. And then there are variously aggressive solutions that stipulate some level of fingerprinting or device identification that are swimming around in market that skirt that line of truly privacy compliant versus we're just not telling users what we're really doing. There's a fourth catch-all bucket, which would be these transitional technologies, the ones that work between the cookie universe to translate it into whatever's coming next. There's a lot of variance in that bucket for what could be considered an actual solution versus something that's just some, sticks and duct tape.
There's two camps that I usually coach advertisers into thinking about this topic when it comes to cookies in general and what their function really is. There's the first function where it's I'm literally trying to just maintain an identifier with a specific individual consumer over time, so that when I serve an ad to them or I have any level of interaction with them today, I can then detect later on if I see that same person again that I had already had an interaction with them. That persistency from session to session is really the main purpose for why cookies exist. The secondary solution, though, is being able to take that one-to-one knowledge of that individual person and that individual consumer and expand it out into people that I don't necessarily interact with today. Basically using it to attract or to reach new audiences that are in target for who I want to reach. One-to-one first-party relationship with every single consumer that you have the opportunity to engage with is the new gold. Because if you have their email address or their mobile phone number or any other details about them, that's going to be the mission-critical key to being able to do everything in the future. That's inclusive of being able to speak to that person again and also using the aggregate knowledge that you have against all of your consumers to be able to then build out new models to reach other people that are like them, or what we would call lookalike modeling today. The advertisers that are probably going to fare best when it comes to this transition are the ones that already have a robust understanding of their existing customer data set and have PII level data on those customers. Your ability to now take that data and map it onto publishers that also have their version of the same thing for people that come to their sites to consume their content, that relationship that you can now have with that individual publisher is a lot stronger and I think a lot more utilitarian than it has been in the past.
I think there's probably a few factors why publishers like us become attractive. One is years of investment and learning that we've made in building this ecosystem. Another is quality, both quality of audience, quality of inventory. That's something that has been bubbling up to the surface beyond just cookie deprecation, that there is a gap in quality inventory in the marketplace.
While limited in scale, for many companies at least, this data provides a really valuable route to insights, planning, activation, and optimization.
For us to be more responsible brands, I think we have to deliver a meaningful interaction every single time consumers interact with our brands. This fundamentally means we need to develop a much richer understanding of consumers. And so the notion of shifting from, I would just call it, demographic-based marketing to people-based marketing has been happening for some time. Cookie deprecation accelerated our journey. Places where we have been testing out, so one is accelerating our first-party strategies. This has been a journey for the last 4 or 5 years, but in the last 18 months, we have massively scaled up initiatives like loyalty platforms, ensuring that we have value exchange programs in each of our top markets. This has enabled us to accelerate our first-party records globally by about 50%. So
all of the other solution sets that I see in the marketplace, particularly ones driven by major agencies, where the agencies want you to take your database and onboard it into their sort of mega data platform and then have them construct new products and new targeting solutions out of it. That's a bit too black box for my comfort. When an advertiser loads their data into that data set, you don't necessarily know what that agency is doing with it from there. There isn't a culture of doing robust auditing of that. Are you 100% confident that that agency group isn't then turning around and selling a high net worth individual audience segment to all their other customers?
It will become more and more important to collect data in context. All of the first-party data solutions that we have, including audience and contextual targeting, are essentially based on acquiring information from a subset of our 10 million subscribers and then modeling those behaviors, combining them with inferred data about readership behavior.
I'm really seeing a renaissance with contextual targeting. Things have come on a long way. We don't have to be so reliant on deterministic demographics, for example.
I think we're moving from deterministic to probabilistic as the language, which is moving from what is absolutely knowable and certain to what is likely to be true. And I think that's one of the big macro shifts that needs to happen.
Instead of trying to find ways to understand and interpret consumer behavior, what contextual signals is doing is focusing on understanding the context in which the advertiser is interacting with the consumer, including where they are, what time of day it is, what's happening in the location that they're in, what content are they viewing, etc.
thinking about, as we have these meaningful interactions with consumers, is there an opportunity for context-based advertising? A lot of our brands play in culture. So if you think about sports, music, these are large tentpole territories. And then how do you build the right type of context-based serving of ads in that territory? So that's
always have the solutions that the big platforms are championing just by virtue of how many users and advertisers they have will get wide adoption. So Google's and its privacy sandbox, it's several variants of clean rooms for the other walled gardens.
So obviously the area with the most focus right now and attention is cross-site privacy preserving solutions that are being built using the tools made available by Google's privacy sandbox. And in that space, the two key tools, there's the Topics API and there's the Protected Audience API.
So the Topics API is focused on categories of recognizable interests that the browser infers based on the web pages that a person visits. While third-party cookies share with other third parties the specific websites that you visit, Topics doesn't do that. It focuses on general interest categories. The Protected Audience API is a new way to address remarketing without relying on third-party cookies. The sites of advertisers that you visited can inform your browser that they'd like a chance to show you ads in the future and directly share info with your browser. So when you visit a site with ad space, an algorithm in your browser helps inform what ad might appear, particularly from businesses that are interested in showing you.
And then we have, of course, all of the universal ID solutions that tie into data providers. So not only can you use first-party data, but you can also still leverage third-party data with certain identifiers. In the identifier space, you have the authenticated solutions, and then you have the probabilistic solutions. For authenticated, people are using hashed emails or even other personal information. So that actually raises privacy concerns in some circles. The hashed email, but deterministic and very accurate approach, it also suffers from scale issues. Probabilistic solutions are super necessary to reach bigger scale and really leverage the open web.
UDID evangelists out there, to a certain extent, overstate the enthusiasm with which the marketplace is adopting it. That said, I think it's critically important that it exists. What I don't want to have happen, and I don't think what anybody really wants in the marketplace, is to have what we've had for the last 50 years in television, where there's only one measurement company, right? Nobody wants to all of a sudden have the Nielsen of CTV and the Nielsen of digital media.
It requires a lot of work that I think most advertisers would consider rather unglamorous. It's not the kind of work that will guarantee you your next promotion. So it's part of why we've been playing hot potato a little bit with this cookie deadline and why folks aren't embracing it much more openly. First of all, you have to have a data strategy, and this is perhaps something silly to say in 2023, 2024, but I say this because for a lot of our clients, it's very clear that they don't actually have an overarching data strategy. They may have some elements of a data strategy developed in a specific channel. Usually for digital advertisers, that's some element of programmatic advertising, and then they don't think through how much is collecting an email address worth for them, or how much is structuring a partnership, then looking at what are already the tools that you have in your technology stack and in your services stack, and going from there as a basis of, all right, well, these 4 things are going to make sense for me in the next 12 to 24 months to tackle.
Privacy Sandbox APIs, we haven't been provided an environment to test them end to end up until this point. So I think with any new technology or technique, your best approach is to establish a really structured test that allows you to test the new capability in a really controlled way, so you can isolate what impact it can have on your marketing before you scale it out. The solutions that are leveraging clients' first-party data or publishers' first-party data are generally showing more effectiveness. And that's because they're tapping into much deeper insights in the audiences that we're trying to target. But there's also acknowledgement that first-party data only gives you so much scale. Similarly, the contextual signal type solutions that I've described, we've been testing pretty extensively, and we're seeing really good results that are showing that we can scale above and beyond the first-party data solutions to provide much greater reach.
We are much more ready than when we originally started the journey 4 or 5 years back. So the solutions we have in place have a global scale. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have developed meta learnings through hundreds of tests. I think we have the right building blocks in place. As the change happens, we are ready for it. Is everything going to be exactly as we imagined? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure we'll run into unforeseen challenges.
There have been certainly some challenges, some marketing challenges, some sales challenges into growing the adoption of our targeting solutions. I think mostly due to the fact that we were essentially providing an alternative to established legacy ways of doing targeting. And so in a way, we had to convince our advertisers that by using first-party data-powered targeting solutions, they could get the same, if not a better performance on their advertising. It's been long and hard, and it's technically hard to implement, but to some extent you have to go through the process and you have to put some real work in it, because we don't have an off-the-shelf solution and we had to build it from scratch.
One of the significant challenges we have to overcome is just getting the ecosystem ready to do end-to-end testing. It's not dependent on a single player, it's dependent on many players. And while we're already discussing test implementation with some ad tech providers, there are many others that are really struggling to prioritize that transition from talking about design into actual implementation, because they have many competing priorities. The second challenge we need to overcome is just visibility into the changes that ad tech providers are making. I think ad tech providers have become really good about adapting to change in the landscape without making their customers really experience some of the complexity that they're having to manage. The change that we're about to go through is so significant that it's important that we provide greater transparency.
I think for a lot of marketers, the core challenge here is who should solve this. For the larger brands, the bigger spenders, there is a sense of ownership here, but for everybody else, it's kind of, hey, is this something that my media agency should be solving for me? Is this something that I'll just leave it to the platform that I'm using the most to solve for me? It doesn't feel like it's a problem that you necessarily need to own the solution for. A lot of companies who haven't really done the homework yet to understand the full impact of cookies going away, so I think that's going to make for a rather choppy Q1, Q2.
There's going to be different levels of sophistication that we'll see, and a lot of that will come down to how big is the brand in terms of size of their first-party data sets and size of their budgets. And their teams and how much time do they have to deal with trying new things.
Just that this topic and how it functions and all the different permutations of how it's going to affect marketing into the future is so complicated and so nerdy that it makes it really hard for sort of a layman or a CMO for that matter to differentiate between the solutions, because they all kind of sound the same. They all sort of sound like they're achieving the same outcome, but functionally under the hood, they are vastly different. And I don't think we as an industry do a terribly great job at highlighting what those differences are.
No matter how good your targeting is, if you can't actually measure and ascribe success to it, it doesn't really necessarily matter.